Jeff and Bridget, how did you find carnivore?
Bridget's the best at telling this story, so we're going to let Bridget do most of the talking. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was kind of keeping it a secret because I have a good lifelong friend named Julie who you had on on the show, and we have been our lives have overlapped over many years, and she had been on a keto journey, and I wasn't real into her keto journey, to be honest. She kind of jokes around about how it was something she posted on Facebook. But then, she would post little things like what she was eating, during different days. And I'd be like, oh, Julie's talking about keto again. And then one day she switched to carnivore. And then several months later, um, she posted a picture of herself in a bikini. And I'm not much of a bikini person, but Julie's my age. Okay. And so I was like, what is Julie doing? Because clearly this is not keto anymore, because what had happened to her was transformative and it was obvious. Well, I just kept that under my hat and didn't talk about it. Um, Jeff and I had been on a journey of trying to lose a little weight over the course of maybe the last 10 years.
Tell them how we got started on Whole30.
And then we had been turned on to Whole30. Many of our friends were on this little test run with Whole30. And it's basically a whole foods diet where you try to avoid processed things and try to stick with meat and whole foods. And I really didn't even know what a whole food was at the time. But I had this crazy experience where I felt like we're faith people, and so we're Christians, and I felt like I'd been praying, God help us. We don't want to be fat when we're older. We don't want to be fat with our grandchildren.
We
We
had
want to be able to get off
we
the
had a lot
floor.
of symptoms and a lot of reasons to not be fat.
Right.
So we were
So
kind of searching for something better.
yeah, and then honestly, I had this course of a couple weeks where I felt this sort of nudging, 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 nudging. And I just kept hearing Whole30, Whole30, Whole30. And I was like, Jeff, we got to do this. I just can't shake it. It's bugging me. It's sort of like, can I please have an ice cream from your grandchild or whatever? Whatever the insistence was, we had to go for it. So, so we dived into the Whole30 and we had success. And this was how many years ago?
We started this 2018. In
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we both had great success. And we felt so good at the onset that we made it 60 days. And then,
We started with 60 days.
mhm,
We liked it so much, I kept going. I went to 90 and then got up to about 110.
yeah. And he lost probably 35 pounds on that. Well, a lot of people are like, well, I can do anything for 30 days, which was kind of, we could do anything for 60 days or 100 days. And we both lost maybe 30, 35 pounds. And then we got off of it because we're like, it's only a short stint, and so we gained all the way back. And we did this a couple of times over, like maybe 2 years later, we did it again. And then another year later, we did it again, usually around the first of the year, even though I don't think either one of us are New Year's resolution people. But it opened one of the things that the book talks about with Whole30 is frankenfoods. And it had never occurred to me before hearing of frankenfoods that there could be something that you could put in your mouth, just eat and swallow, and that would not be a real food. If I can eat it and chew it and swallow it, then it's a food.
It's labeled as real food, but it's not.
But Frankenfood is obviously something that was made by a scientist, just like Frankenstein was made by a scientist. But um, finding,
GO'd.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, finding things that were not real foods that we had the ability to consume had kind of changed our way of thinking about food. And so it wasn't much of a stretch that when I just sort of took to my little sugar addiction. Um, and so I kept eating sugar. And Jeff would get frustrated. He was
What's that?
how many pounds were you?
I got down to
You got up,
255.
what did you
Well,
get
I
up
got
to?
up to 285
80?
pounds.
Yeah, he was
285 pounds.
anyway. So he couldn't take it anymore. And so he kept doing these things that we didn't do a lot of research and study into keto or low carb or whatever, but he kept trying, to do things that were along those lines.
Of whole foods. Yeah. Probably my biggest thing was white food. Like that was a bad thing for me. Like I would get addicted to white foods like breads, rice, potatoes. And my biggest reason for losing or for being on whole foods per se was to lose weight. I had some other things that I was hoping to recognize as I went along, and we'll talk about that later. But my biggest thing was just losing weight. So it's coming up to the part
Yeah.
where
Well, there's so many aspects of this whole thing, but when I realized that Julie had so much success on carnivore, I had heard of carnivore. We had heard of carnivore because one of our kids' in-laws had done a meat only diet. And I'm like, meat only, what in the world could that possibly accomplish? That it can't be healthy, it
sounds
can't be
so
good.
unbalanced, so
Yeah, yeah. And so but I started to see connections because I had had an issue with alcohol. Mary Tyler Moore uh was an alcoholic, and there's a paraphrase of some sort, and she said, when alcohol became my solution,
I knew I
i,
had
I
problems.
knew I had a problem. And so I think we across the board we comfort ourselves or try to soothe anxiety or try to solve problems using food and alcohol and all those different things. And so that became an issue for both of us. I leaned toward alcohol as a solution to deal with those midlife anxieties and stressors and loss and pain and divorce and any of those things that could be a problem. And so when I've been completely alcohol free for almost 10 years. In a couple weeks, it'll be 10 years. And so that's a good thing. But it did open my eyes to the idea that I could use um, chemical reactions in my body to somehow try to comfort myself.
Yeah.
And even though Jeff is not the same as me in that regard, he has a love for potatoes to end all, loves. And, rice,
Right.
potatoes, corn chips, those things. And we all know it's just a matter of science. Those things there's insulin spikes and chemical reactions that are all related to.
While we were on the first part of the journey with Whole Foods, my wife could always tell when I had like maybe tried to like cheat the budget a little. I didn't want to spend too much, so I'd be out at work or something and I'd have a sandwich. And she always knew when I ate bread, I'd come home and she could tell that I was bloated.
Yeah, it was the funniest thing you've ever seen. His belly would come in the room before he did. And it was like he would have this puffiness in his midsection. And I'd say, "What did you eat?" And I mean, and it was like this crazy thing. And he goes, "I didn't eat anything." Oh, except for that one thing, and it was usually some sort of a
Like a Subway
sandwich or
sandwich or something.
wrap
Lots
or
of
a
bun or
yeah, and it was
yeah.
like I did eat gluten. And I am gluten intolerant. Um I have never had the biopsy to find out that I'm celiac, but I've got a grandchild who's celiac. Many members of my family are celiac. And so I'm not going to go through the pain and suffering of 3 weeks of eating gluten just so that a doctor can do a biopsy and tell me that I for sure am, because it's genetic. And so we know that it came from somewhere. And so hadn't I'd given up alcohol. I gave up gluten. And I had
starting to get on her nerves. They've got to give up everything.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And so I had done a lot of allergy testing over the years because I had severe eczema. So finding the solution with my skin was something that never in a million years would I have thought that could have been connected to a diet that would make me lose weight. So
So we were at home. We were sitting in front of the TV watching a show, and I was just aware of how much of my journey with Whole Foods had been kind of pure discipline, and just doing it out of discipline and realizing that I was struggling with cravings. And especially like one of the big things for me is if I had a meal that it just looked perfect. It looked like the perfect meal. One piece of meat, a vegetable, and a starch or something. Everybody would think, hey, that's a great meal. But after eating the potato or whatever, I just sat there quietly, and I finally opened my mouth and I said to Bridget, I just can't take the cravings anymore. As soon as I have that potato, like a whole potato or a half a potato, I would think about food, and all I would think about is like a bag of chips. I'd go get some. I love those kettle chips, kettle potato chips, and I'd go upstairs and get a bag. And I really determined that I'm just going to eat a few chips, and by the end of the night, that whole bag would be gone.
yeah,
So
and the cravings were out of control. And one day he finally said to me,
said it out loud.
yeah, he's like, these cravings are going to kill me. What am I going to do? And I'm like, oh no.
I said we need something different. Something's
And
got
I
to
was
change.
like, and he goes, do you have any ideas? And I said, yep, Julie. You know what I
He
mean?
had been, keeping
Because
that
if
in.
Julie and I'm like, and we, like I said, we never had done anything seriously like low carb or keto officially, but we had
Things that look
loosely,
more balanced, like
loosely, yeah.
like
Oh, we're going to eat. For years, we ate meat and a salad. One of those bagged salads, those ones that had that hyper palatable dressing, that
a little
super
kit.
sweet
Have a
with
kit.
feed oils
Yeah,
and nonsense. And we thought somehow that was a good
we
thing.
were doing really good.
Yeah, and it was not a good thing. And it created cravings again because those for us, I don't know about the rest of the world, but for us, a small amount of carbohydrate. You give us a pile of broccoli on our plate, we're going to have some sort of an insulin spike and we're going to be starving for junk. I spent months eating gluten-free cupcakes. I would go to the store and I would buy them and I would put them in the freezer, and every day after my salad and meat I would eat a cupcake, a gluten-free cupcake.
I know we're going to talk about this later, but looking back in my life, I can't believe how many meals and how much snacking I did during the day
Yeah.
before a carnivore diet.
Anyway, so when it came to when he asked the question, I knew I had instant accountability. I'm like, "Yep, I know what to do, and this is what my friend is doing." And so, it's a carnivore diet. It's much stricter. It's basically zero carbs.
I was instantly interested though in it because, being a person who's wanted to lose weight for a long time and has been trying to lose weight for many years in different ways and tried many things, you can kind of like, listen to things and realize that the potential of this might work. When you
Mhm.
hear some of the story, you could see how, with your experience versed with what they're saying, I could see this could probably work.
So sorry to interrupt, but was it a little bit like, well, tried everything that they recommend and nothing really works. So
Absolutely.
maybe if I go in the opposite direction, that could be something that does work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and to add fuel to the fire, I was raised by a family doctor. My dad passed away 5 years ago, but he was a family doctor, and his specialty was obesity. And he was passionate. He wanted to learn. He was a constant learner. He was 94 when he passed away, but he loved helping people and he loved learning, and he treated people from early age all through geriatrics, and
Brid-
he bariatrics was his passion.
Bridget has talked to me about how she wishes he was still around because he would love to hear
He would
about some
love
of this.
to this whole thing, this whole philosophy and sciencey. He would have the sciencey aspect. he would have embraced it and said, yep, that's the solution. Of course it is. And then my brother is an internist. And so he's dealt with, all kinds of things internally, heart disease, all that autoimmune stuff. But so I spend lots and lots of family gatherings chatting with him about the science aspect and about how things have changed and how this has affected everything.
We thought he would resist a little bit, but he
He's on it.
seems to be getting it.
Yep. Anyway, so all that is to say that the minute Jeff heard it and he embraced it mentally, he said, okay, tell me everything.
So
And
the first
so
thing she did,
I'm like, okay,
got a video.
we signed into YouTube and started watching videos. And the first thing that came up, or one of the first things that came up, was Jordan Peterson's interview on Rogan. And he was talking about Michaela's journey, and he was talking about his depression and anxiety. And I'm like, Jeff,
I had some depression.
He had
anxiety.
Severe depression, anxiety. I had gone through a stint with severe depression. And I just couldn't believe that this weight loss idea could have so many ramifications, because if it could heal Michaela's rheumatoid arthritis or put all of her symptoms into remission, what could it do to my eczema, which had been the bane of my existence since I was a tiny little kid? I had open wounds all over my hands and all over my feet, and it was a dyshydrotic. So it would be these little weeping sores that I would scratch at madly. And then the healing process was slow. And I was constantly inflamed, constantly in misery. And to be honest, I still have some minor symptoms of that. It's been 15 months, but I am 1,000 times better. And I had been under the treatment of a dermatologist for years. I'd been on many, many stints of prednisone. I had, that's another story. Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe I won't. But being on prednisone for 2.5 years, I gained 100 pounds. Horrible. Because I had received a vaccine and well, I'll tell you about it. This is how I tell stories. Anyway, I went to the doc and the doc said, would you like a flu shot? And I was like, sure. And so, they gave me a flu shot that was supposed to be in my deltoid, but they ended up shooting it into my joint, into the bursa sac. And so they inflamed that joint, which inflamed my entire system. It passed through every joint in my body. I was in agony. I was dragging around. I could barely walk. And it was an injury that I had received from having that vaccine shot into the joint. And so I had to see a rheumatologist, and that's who they diagnosed me with a really weird disease that was only for people in their 80s. And this was, 10 years ago. And I ended up being on that prednisone, and I gained an extraordinary amount of weight. My cravings were insane. I was an insatiable sugar addict.
It started a trend of pain. She got some pain in her neck area too.
Yeah, and that was years later. But I finally weaned myself off of the prednisone, which I wouldn't advise. But because it was ruining my life. It gave me so many horrible symptoms. Anyway, so many inflammation, so much pain. And then my eczema symptoms that I couldn't get over. The dermatologist put me on minimum of 6 different biologics, and one of them worked for 2 years, and then one day it didn't work anymore. And so nothing was working. And I was finally like, well, I'm done with this. I'm not going to be doing that protocol anymore with the dermatologist. And so when I caught wind of Michaela's hope, and I realized that her situation is not like mine, but it's similar, because these kinds of autoimmune things tend to run in packs. They tend to heal in packs. So if I could heal some of my autoimmune stuff, then it could influence my eczema as well.
The details in her story help to believe it.
Yeah.
She knew her story so well, Michaela, and had gone through so much and tried to self-learn everything, and you could tell that it was very believable.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure. Anyway, so Jeff was like, I'm in. And I'm like, I am
I
not
was in that
in. I
night.
am not in. I have like 6 cupcakes in the freezer. I need to eat those things. And I had a little, I would eat the cupcakes and eat some candy when the cupcakes were gone for the day. I would eat something else, eat some sweets.
One of the things that stuck out to me was I think it was Jordan Peterson that said that he just ate when he was hungry and he was able to stop when he was full. And that was my trigger. I was like, that's what I need. That's what I really want. I
Yeah.
want to be able to feel full when I'm done. And that's something that I have never felt with some of the best foods in the world that you would think, this is so delicious. When I'm done, I'm just going to be satisfied. And it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I think because my entire life I've felt like the fact I can't stop eating, it's like I've almost got some disease or something. Like looking at
Yeah.
these people that can just eat a little bit and then kind of stop, and I'm like, why are they like that? You
I'm
know?
thinking of a particular friend who can do that with even the carby foods. And I'm like, man, I don't know how people do this.
Yeah. And Jeffrey was saying, I mean, he started the next day. I told him this information,
I
but
was
as
in.
soon as I was accountable to it, I'm like, okay, we got to do it together. So as soon as the rest of the food was out of the house, including those 6 cupcakes, um,
I started on the 5th of October, 2024, and she started on the 11th.
yeah, 1 week later. I mean, from the minute he started, he was eating bacon and eggs and
I did
and
the I did the
sausages
beef
and
bacon and eggs. Beef bacon, butter and eggs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the next day, and I was almost in awe because he was like, I feel so good. I'm not even hungry. I'm not craving anything. I am satisfied.
Before she went on, I think it took maybe 4 to 5 days. All the pain in my joints were already gone. Within 5 days, I had so much pain in my joints, it was not even believable. I couldn't go up the stairs without pulling myself up the stairs. I could probably go up them once and then have to take a rest, but my knees were in a lot of pain. My back was in pain,
He had
lots of
he
pain.
had broken his back 20 years ago. He fell off a roof. And he had that problem. He had the problem of having
So I've
a
had
couple of
sciatica.
horrendous sciatica that was debilitating. He had
What do you call that? Plantar fasciitis?
plantar fasciitis. He had
I had to get surgery on my knee because the meniscus, they had to shave it off and all my cartilage was so-called gone. That's something we thought about too today when we were talking about this, was that I think a lot of us, and I've heard you say this, is that a lot of us think that, or one of your people that you interviewed, think that when you get old, there's just things that happen and it's just going to happen and you can't really, there's no getting around it. And so I had this impression that once your knee starts to have all that pain and your bone on bone, so called, then, it just goes downhill from there. I literally, I don't want to say this too early in the interview, but I literally wonder if some of the cartilage has been growing back because I feel so good
yeah.
now.
And I mean, you don't even one thing that I keep one of my themes for this whole carnivore journey is you don't know how bad you feel until you feel good. We didn't realize this was going to have anything to do with anything other than weight loss. And what we have come to is Jeff had arthritis in all these joints. He had all this broken back, residual compression fractures in his spine. He had all kinds of these things that were plaguing him that most people would consider old age.
My job was a lot of times to be like a show floor salesperson, like you're on a show floor. And so you're walking on hard ground a lot. So by the end of the day, man, the sciatica is unreal. I look like if somebody could see me behind, like when I was doing it at Lowe's, I could stand behind the desk and I was selling appliances and I lift up a leg like a stork. And I just, that's the only relief I could get. And I'd go back to to the office and sit down, and then I'd have to stand back up. Nothing felt comfortable. You have to sit down, and then you want to stand back up to feel comfortable. So
Anyway, so before I even started, like Jeff was saying, about 4 or 5 days in, he was up and down those stairs like it was his job. And it was like you couldn't get him to go upstairs to get anything for any reason. He's like, I sat down, I'm not getting up. And we sit in our little basement, our finished basement, and watch TV shows or watch YouTube
at the end of the
videos.
night, yeah.
At the end of the day, when we're done with all of our obligations,
So
we
I used to
laugh.
tease her because I'd sit down, and 2 minutes later she'd want me to go get her a drink, and I didn't want to get up.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
So yeah, and so when he was going up and down the stairs, I was like, "What is happening to this guy?" And the joint pain and all that is dramatically changing. And so then I got on the carnivore diet about a week after him to the day. And then within a couple of days, I noticed right away I'd eat sausage and eggs for breakfast, and I'm like, all of a sudden the food noise is going away. And I was like a hardcore sugar person. I could eat my cupcakes, I could eat my hot tamales or whatever.
over the years she would pick an item. Like the first item I think I remember that she picked was those what are they called?
Circus peanuts?
No, no,
No.
no.
Okay, those two.
They were Rice Krispie treats.
Oh, I liked Rice Krispie treats. But they still gave me a bellyache, and I was like, but it's not gluten, so I can eat it because this bloat isn't as bad as my other allergic reaction when I get gluten.
I was more of a savory at it, like potatoes, potato chips,
Mhm.
rice.
Yeah.
Love rice.
And so anyway, but it was any number of insulin spiking thing. I wasn't that selective. But I would go through phases. I mean so many different sweets that I would eat. But within moments, I mean within hours, within days, I was all of a sudden I realized the food noise was shut off. It was shocking. And so we both of us realized we're not hungry like we were. We can actually wait till dinner, and then we can eat our dinner, and yeah, if it be, a fatty ribeye or a filet mignon dipped in butter, and we are not thinking about food after bed or before bed, after dinner. And it doesn't even occur to us that we could. And then our body immediately started rejoicing, our both of us. So one thing that I noticed with him was we're sitting at our brunch place because we go to this brunch place twice a week, and we'll eat eggs and bacon.
Oh yeah.
And they're very kind because they do it in a very strict way, and they're
Right.
very used to it just for us. And one day I'm looking at him, and of course his complexion is already changing because he's looking so much healthier. But he had this big skin tag that was developed right underneath his eyelid. And it was really noticeable, and it was making him look like an old man. And it was like, what's going on with the skin tag? One day I said, stop. Don't move. And I snapped a picture of him, and that entire big bulbous skin tag that was under his eyelid was gone. And I'm like,
Wow.
what is
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
And then I was talking to my dermatologist because this is before I broke up with my derm. I told him, this is, we've seen all these results on this way of eating. So what is that? Why did his skin tag go away? And he goes, well, of course it did. Do you know what skin tags are? And I said, no. And he goes, they're insulin spikes. If you have insulin spikes in your diet, it'll pool up in these little spots and create skin tags. And I mean, within 3 weeks, that thing had reabsorbed. And he goes, it reabsorbs because he's on a zero carb diet.
There were two of them, one on this eye and one on this eye, and both of them went away. I do have one more.
A bigger one
It's
that has been
it's
resistant.
now very, very small. It hasn't gone away all
But
the way.
it's crazy.
But it's
If you look at
trying to
his
go away.
before pictures and his after
Yeah.
pictures, and then within weeks, my mother started saying,
Look
Jeff, your skin is just beautiful. Both of you, your skin is beautiful. Things, your complexion has changed. And I'm like, if it's showing in our complexion, in our skin, what's happening internally?
Yeah.
So yeah,
It
it was it
it's just amazing once this starts and you start well, firstly, as you noted, the food noise goes away, but then when you start to really sit back and think, "You mean my body could have healed itself the whole time
Oh my
and no
gosh.
one told me?"
Yep.
Yeah.
And do you know how much those biologics are that you are prescribed? For 1 month, it's like some of them, the lowest price ones are like $3,500, and the highest price ones are almost 7,000.
That's
So
crazy.
if I were to have stayed on those, I mean, thank God my insurance covered them for all those years. And then and then if I needed financial assistance, I'd contact the company, whatever company was the maker of that biologic. And I'd say, can get financial aid? And then usually, they would say yes. And so I could get a little bit of an offset because who can afford $7,000 a month? So, anyway, and then, and then one day he had gotten off oh,
Go ahead. You say.
his sleep apnea machine. He'd been on a sleep apnea machine for 20 years. And then one day he said, I don't think I need it anymore because so much of his flesh, all this flesh around here had gone away.
Just recently, we learned that what do they call it? Visceral fat.
The visceral fat.
So there's can be visceral fat even in your tongue and just different organs. And I must have been losing that because I could tell that things were getting better with my sleep. So I gave it a try. I had been on, like I said, or like she said, 18 to 20 years been on a CPAP machine. And that is like you can't go on a vacation without packing your CPAP machine. There's no like, oh, I think I'll just lay down right here, and if I fall asleep, so what? Yeah, she was scared to death if I
Yeah.
fall
Because
asleep.
he would stop breathing and I could hear him. And then I'd be up all night. But the other side of the coin for him was he was exhausted all the
I
time.
was so tired all the time.
And even that sleep apnea machine needed adjustment, but we didn't always get it adjusted, or it got old and it was outdated. And so, or it would
They
get
had a recall.
worn out.
Had a recall
Yeah, it
on
would
it.
get worn out and then it wouldn't seal very
Yeah.
well. And
I guess the sponges would deteriorate and it would get into your lungs.
And
So
so
that
he
would,
wasn't getting rest. And it was just pure torture, which exacerbated his anxiety and exacerbated his depression and exacerbated his
you're
pain.
very dependent on that machine. You have to be dependent on it.
Yeah. And so when he got off that, that was huge. And then one day he stopped taking his
Oh yeah.
antidepressants and
I
his
did that
anxiety meds.
well before the carnivore diet, because I'm not going to say that some of the stuff we did before didn't help, because it did. And this will lead us, because we're on this subject about helping. One of the major things that happened that I've not heard a lot of carnivores say is that when I was a showroom floor salesperson for appliances at the Nebraska Furniture Mart, one of the biggest showrooms that there is. Um, my biggest problem, I got about 2020, I believe it was, I was having extreme trouble with hearing. And one day it was so bad, I couldn't stand 3 feet in front of somebody and hear them speak. And so I would lean in, I'd put my best ear forward. But when you need both your ears, my left one was going out really bad, and my right one was going out a lot, but not as bad as the left one. And so I noticed that just the triangulation of all the noise in the background, where is that coming from, was so disturbing. And trying to hear their words 3 feet away or maybe less, I don't know where the bubble is,
Right.
but was horrible. I One day I literally walked back to the office and I said, "Man, I don't mean to do this, but I can't take this." And I said, "Today I'm gonna have to go to the doctor and find out what's wrong, because I cannot hear. I couldn't
So
hear."
he went to an ear, nose, throat doctor, and the doctor's like, no problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slit the little holes in both your ears. I'm going to insert hoses and we're going to suck out all the goo that's in your ear, and then you'll be able to hear. And so that's exactly what the doctor did. Stuck it in there, sucked out the goo, which is a dreadful thing to say on television or on YouTube. But so then he had all the inflammation was removed. So then he was like, I can hear. And so he went right back to his normal life until 2 weeks passed and it was all back in there again. And it was like re-inflamed again.
Especially on the left side. I think if I had to give it a number, I'd say I probably lost 70% of my hearing on the left side, maybe 25 to 30 on the right. It was
I think it was worse than that. Jeff tends to underestimate how bad it is, but it was bad. He's like, I can't hear. I can't hear. I can't triangulate. And it was, and if you've ever experienced that, you know what that looks like. And so after trying the whole 30, he saw some results and he saw some improvement to his hearing.
so
And that was
basically, in a
great.
nutshell, what was happening is I was getting inflammation from what I was eating, and it was going behind my eardrum or wherever that settles in, and causing me too much buildup to where I just flat couldn't hear.
And it was never healed by any medicine he took. It was never healed by any other protocol, any other practice other than changing his diet.
By
And
getting off of like the main things like breads, rice, starches, what else? Like real sugars, processed foods, things like that, and eating whole foods, either real plant foods or real meat, and not putting batter on them or anything like that. It made a big difference, but it wasn't perfect.
it wasn't perfect and it wasn't
But it was
sustainable.
enough to do my
And
job.
that when we did transition to carnivore, then it became sustainable because we didn't have all of that nonsense. What I would do is I would make a recipe that was with when we were on Whole 30 or our once a year visit to Whole 30, where I would make it would be coconut milk, banana, chia seeds, chia, and make a chia pudding. And I would mix this stuff up
Calling it Whole Foods.
and it was considered a whole food. Okay. But I was a crazy person. I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, where's the chia pudding? So, because I would be like, I am craving it in the middle of the night.
I never caught her because I was in prison to my CPAP machine.
That's right. That's exactly right. But and then I would be like, this is out of control. And so when he did say to me about the cravings, I knew that I was in the same boat because the cravings were out of control. Because I hadn't really thought of it like that before, but that's exactly what it was.
So when you take all of this into account, the cravings, the up late at night, eating, the chia seed pudding, the lack of CPAP now, all this kind of stuff, like, sleep must be a very peaceful and restorative
Oh,
experience
it's
for you both now.
it
Yeah,
is very much.
absolutely.
So
And we used to nap every day. I mean, we used to be big nappers. Like if I got a half an hour nap, I would be doomed. I would hate my life. I would think I was being robbed of all humanity and happiness, but I would need 2 hours to nap in the middle of the day. And I still do like a little quiet time, but I don't sleep. Um,
also, as a person that was, I guess, aging, uh, going to the restroom at night was another thing. And now I can, once I get into bed, I don't say that I don't have to go a little bit before then, but once I get in and settled, I'm good to go.
yeah,
So
that's amazing.
yeah,
There's so many
I
things
don't
that
get up
have,
till I'm up.
yeah. And then we don't sleep all day, sleep in the middle of the day
I have
like we
so
used to.
much energy. I heard you talking about this with another person, but the energy is crazy. You want to move, like you said. You want to
Hmm.
move all the time.
It's
So I
almost
am
like
doing
you're
a lot
being
of exercise.
compelled to move, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't before, so it's like, hey, you got something you want need me to get you now?
Right. And I mean, before our bodies, I didn't realize that our bodies were crying out for proper nutrition. And it's that, that's part of the reason why we have all these cravings. Our bodies are trying to find the nutrition that it needs.
I'm of the opinion now that there are things you can't put in the category. There's the statement that everybody wants to say is all things in moderation, but we talked about frankenfood. I really believe there's some things you just flat don't want in your body. You
Yep.
know, no, not at all. I mean, it's not moderation to eat something that is bad for you. Like, let's say something obvious like dirt. You know.
Hmm.
So sugar seems to be worse than dirt. Especially added sugars, things like that. And so I don't look at it the same anymore. I say that all things, and if I was ever going to say something about moderation to somebody who wants to stay there, I would probably gear them towards things that can be considered real food.
Yeah, I was just looking back at my notes. One thing that happened that we haven't mentioned yet is right during the summer before we started carnivore. So summer of 24 into fall, Jeff uh, had it in his head that kind of a keto way of life would be meat and whole foods, lots of greens. So he was eating
Wraps?
these smoothies,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
the smoothies. And he ended up in the emergency room twice with kidney
Kidney
stones.
stones.
And the doctor said, "My only advice to you is give up the green leafy things.
I
Are
was
you
shocked.
eating spinach? Are you eating kale? Are you eating black pepper?" And he's
I
like,
had a favorite smoothie. I think it was kiwi, pineapple, and kale, and maybe it had something else sweet in it like that. But I made sure they didn't add any sugar to it. It was just all natural. I thought I was doing something really great for my
but
body.
it was a
It
bomb of
literally
oxalates
it
and it
took me to those kidney stones real fast.
real fast.
Yeah,
And so the doctor said, "You have got to get,"
and I was shocked. I was like,
he's like,
kale.
"How did you call me out like that?" It was the funniest thing.
Yeah,
Jeff was like, "What do you mean I can't eat kale? I thought that was what I was supposed to eat." And so when he got off that, then the kidney stones went away. We went on carnivore. And then the other thing, meanwhile, my trip to the emergency room a couple of times was I had some bone spurs that had developed in one of those compressed discs in my back, um, laying on the nerve in my back, in my neck. And
the
it was
most
like,
pain I've ever seen anybody go
it
through for
was
so long. She
horrendous.
went through it for.
Weeks. I couldn't sleep. I had to be, I mean,
I cried for her.
it was the worst pain, and I've had kidney stones and I've given birth, and so this was the worst. The nerve pain, it's you can't escape it. There's nothing they can give you that will relieve the
I felt
pain.
helpless trying to
and
help her.
and when I got off all the every food except for meat, butter, bacon, eggs, it changed everything. So I mean, I was paralyzed with pain. I had to be. One day I went and visited my daughter so that we visit our kids periodically, and we were visiting one of them one day, and I was too miserable to play a game. So they went and played a game, and then we're like, okay, let's go. And I went to get up off the couch, and I collapsed, and everybody was almost in tears because I couldn't move. They had to call an ambulance to try to get me up to get me to the ambulance because I was absolutely collapsing and collapsing to the floor.
Did they get you there, or did we have to?
They got me out the door,
Yeah.
but I mean I almost can't remember, but it was horrendous.
So
So we were desperate.
what is it like now? Is it like the inflammation's gone, the bone spurs are still there, but the inflammation's gone, and so it doesn't hurt anymore?
I guess there's some magic that happened. I haven't had an MRI. I don't know, but I do know that I'm not symptomatic anymore. So I mean, what can I say other than if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But it was broke. And I didn't realize that going on a weight loss regimen could take me away from depression. It could take me away from the bone spurs in my neck,
The pain.
ruining my life, which we all attributed to growing older. And, all these things like different arthritis symptoms for Jeff and his hearing loss. I mean, multiple changes in what I didn't even realize really what it meant to be inflamed, because you're like, well, I'm puffy and I know that I'm 100 pounds overweight. Um, and at this point, Jeff had probably lost about 30 pounds, maybe 25 pounds doing like a keto or Whole 30 type of eating plan.
I started over again, right before we went into carnivore and got some results,
And
maybe
then
35 pounds.
since then, he's lost
Another
75 pounds on carnivore. And I've lost 90 pounds on carnivore. And,
Wow.
so his whole journey, he's lost over 100 pounds.
When you look at all this, I mean, life has improved so much since October of 24. Um, you're no longer on the CPAP machine, Jeff. Are either of you still
correct.
taking any meds?
I take no meds now, none.
No, nothing. You know what? Well, we take supplements, but we take iodine and we take, um,
Potassium, magnesium.
yeah, we'll do electrolytes, those kinds of things. But um, I don't even, I ran out of my antidepressants several months ago, and I feel so good that I'm
Not needing them.
not even worrying about that
Wow.
anymore. And so,
I've probably had to take what do they give you for low or bad sugar, high blood pressure? Not high blood pressure, but
no, they were trying to get you on a statin,
yeah. I,
and
I've been on something for high
Oh,
sugar
is
that
that
they tried to,
metformin?
maybe so, yeah.
I don't. Were you on that? I
Well,
didn't
they
know that.
tried it
If
for
he
a
did,
while,
I
but
didn't
I
know.
didn't have to stay on very long.
Yeah, he was. He doesn't have.
Already getting into that journey.
Yeah.
Right. So, how are you both eating now? What is your kind of day-to-day pattern?
I For a long time we were eating 2 meals a day. We Like I mentioned, we have our brunch that we go to. That's our date twice a week. We go on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we'll eat a pile of bacon and eggs. In Jeff's case, I've
I'm
given up eggs recently.
I-
Um,
I'm a real estate agent, so I go to the office maybe till about 11 or 12, and so but I make sure and do brunch with her on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So on the other days, I normally don't even think about food.
yeah.
So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll have eggs, bacon, and maybe some sausage or something like that, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then the other days, I usually don't think about food. But when I have thought about it, and I usually do it around maybe 11, it'll be something like breakfast. Like what I would do is scrambled eggs and bacon or something like that.
Or
Scrambled eggs and
sausage.
sausage.
And then in the evening, we'll usually eat some type of beef. Um, our favorite, of course, is steaks. And I don't do well with fatty ribeyes. I
I
feel
love
like
fatty ribeyes.
I'm a terrible carnivore because I don't love fatty ribeyes like I should. I love filet mignons. So I eat a lot of filet mignons with butter
So
because
she
I
has to
want to
put a
get it.
lot of butter on it to get her fat.
Yeah, and then we'll eat ribeye beef fat trimmings because we don't like the other beef fat trimmings.
Yeah,
Um,
the more we get, sometimes if we want to get real strict with it and go more lion diet, which if you don't know what that is, somebody out there, it's when you're eating more uh, just beef. And so that's why we would lean towards some trimmings. Like we might go to the butcher and have them give us some fat trimmings and make some what we call popcorn. We'll put them in the air fryer and maybe put a little bit of something else out there that we might not know is pluck. And it's just it's a
seasoning,
seasoning
yeah,
that comes from some of the
beef
organs,
organs, yeah.
beef organs.
Um,
So that will give us our fat. So when you get to lion diet, you got to be kind of careful how to get your fat. And I'm lucky because I'm not allergic to much, so I get mine from bacon a lot. I don't really like to eat butter like you see the butter gal do or some of these other people. I don't. I get kind of wow, overwhelmed a little bit fast with butter. But you melt it or something and put something in it, yeah, good to go. But
yeah. And I think that I'm leaning more toward beef only. I think that that's where I belong. I also think that I'm leaning away from seasonings. I think that's where I belong. But I think I had allergy testing done 20 years ago because everybody's been trying to get to the bottom of my eczema symptoms for many, many years. And one of the things was to be tested for allergens. And so when I was tested, everybody in the allergy clinic was called into my room to look at the results of my allergy testing because everything on my back, all the scratch testing, everything inflamed. So I got it through my head that I was allergic to a whole lot of things that and then back when I was young and I knew everything, I was sure that that was not true. Well, of course, I'm not allergic to rice. Of course, I'm not allergic to oranges or chocolate or mushrooms or tomatoes. I've been eating those things my whole life. And then when I got a little older and I saw the symptoms of what it looked like to not be able to eat gluten anymore, those symptoms were nothing like what was going on in my body when I ate rice. But I didn't realize that across the board, all these things were causing inflammation
especially soy for
that
you.
didn't, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and soy. If I eat soy, I go into a trance. I don't even know who I am. Keep repeating myself. My brain goes empty. I can't eat those things. And so when all those things, when I started eliminating things later in life, like the last year or so, and then I started seeing positive results. I remembered back to 20 years ago when I had that allergy testing done, and I was like, "Oh, I really was allergic, but it was different because my symptoms were different because it didn't look like what I didn't have anaphylaxis, I didn't have diarrhea, I didn't have, I didn't swell up like a balloon. You have your own ideas of what it means to be allergic to something, and you're not necessarily right. And so I finally took those things a little more seriously, and I'm like, maybe there was something to it, even though I thought that I knew what I was doing with my diet. So yeah, we ended up we like I said earlier on in here, you don't know how good you can feel until you feel good.
Mm.
And so, and all these residual things that happened simply because we wanted to lose a few pounds. And we lost the few pounds, and then everything else started to change. My joint pain all went away. That was from that inflammatory response I had from that joint that shot. Because I was still dealing with low levels of that pain after all these years. It was just something in my system that had never truly flushed out. And so now it's out. Um, the exhaustion, just everything has
It's
changed.
fantastic. And, and it really it all comes down to to Julie's bikini, you know?
Yes.
If, one of your friends, Jeff, asked you, "How did you get off your CPAP machine?" You could say, "Oh, Julie's
Now I'm just
bikini."
gonna say,
It's Julie's bikini.
Um
She's in trouble now. Everybody's going to want to see the picture.
So,
that's right.
um, uh, one of the things that I was meaning to ask you about was, Bridget, you mentioned that you broke up with your dermatologist. So what
Yeah.
happened there, and have you either of you been to see a doctor at all in the last year?
Well, I would say probably 3 or 4 months in to carnivore, we went to my work clinic just to have an annual physical. And so one of the things was blood work. And of course, everything was excellent. The one thing they said was well, our numbers were not too far off from each other, except for the one marker that says you have high levels of inflammation. I have high levels of inflammation. And I said, well, of course I do. I've got severe eczema. But that was at the beginning. And now so much has changed since then. I haven't been back. But with regard to my dermatologist, I had the best of intentions to going back and seeing him, especially after having been um, on this way of eating for a certain amount of time. I wanted to kind of give him the heads up that, hey, you remember all those meds we tried? Nothing worked, but this is working. And I don't think I'm completely over it, because seasonally when the ragweed is high, or seasonally when the mold is high, those two things are big triggers for me. And I think gradually my overall allergies are going down, and like I said, I'm not on meds. I'm not taking allergy meds around the clock anymore. I Seasonally I'll start taking allergy meds, but I can see that my overall symptoms have diminished so much. I'm going to probably be getting off those too. Well, and that's again seasonally because I'm not taking them now. So, but when it was ragweed season between August and October, I was taking them. So, but it wasn't helping a lot. You know what I mean? But
It's amazing how fast some things heal and other things seem to take a little bit of time.
mhm.
Yeah.
My gut health didn't dramatically improve until about 12 and a half months on carnivore. And then my stomach calmed down because I think I had so much gut problem because I'd been living on carbohydrates for 50 some years, um, that all of a sudden my body just sort of accepted that things had been purged, from the system, and that I had been cleaned up. The things that I had been eating, thinking that I was safe to eat them. And then when I eliminated them, how much better the whole thing turned out to be.
Right,
So,
right. And so for you both now, do you feel like carnivore is the way forward? There's no going back?
Yes, at least it will be the staple for sure.
mhm.
I have tried to see if there's a couple things I can do, but yeah, there's no turning back for me.
Yeah.
I don't think so anyway.
hmm
I've said that before to certain things and have done it before, but it is definitely
hmm
the baseline
hmm
for here out.
I mean, we consider ourselves fringe carnivores if we introduce dairy.
Even if we introduce dairy, we've been very strict from day one.
Yeah.
So
But I get scared. And we can see little changes in the way we lose weight, and if we plateau, if we introduce things like heavy cream.
one of the
And
things that we said this earlier, but what she calls for me is like when I can tell I get what I called either a stalemate or like what else did we call it? When I couldn't quite lose weight, I was slowing down.
stuck, yeah,
Yeah,
stuck
stuck
plateau.
plateau. She would say it usually is because I'm adding cheese, and if
Yeah.
and when I do add cheese, it does tend to make me want more cheese.
hmm
So if there's ever been a stall for me, it usually she calls it my cheese handles.
Yeah, it's like he's been faithful. As I already alluded, I don't want to ever look back on where I came from. I don't want to see those pictures. I don't want to remind myself. I didn't take before pictures because Lord knows I didn't want to see that again. So, and I but Jeff has taken pictures faithfully since the very beginning. And so he has these pictures of himself with his belly, and he's like, his belly is flat, and I'm like, wow. But then if he introduces cheese, he gets a tiny little bit of flab on his sides, like people would call it your love handles, and I call it his cheese handles because so
Right.
Because she's trying to tell me to stop.
Yeah.
yeah.
Jeff and Bridget, if one of your friends came to you and said, "Okay, I'm going to try this carnivore thing. Tell me what to do," would you recommend they just jump in or go in slowly?
No, not at all. Both of us say we want them to watch videos for about 2 weeks. We think you should believe in it
I think, yeah,
before you get started.
I'm 100% of the opinion that don't you dare start it unless you believe it. If you believe it, then start it. But don't go in there thinking you know what it means to be a carnivore, thinking you know what it means to do a carnivore lifestyle, because you don't. You need to make sure you get enough electrolytes. You need to make sure you're getting enough fat. Don't eat lean chicken breasts. eat, you know, a lot of beef. It's the most nutrient dense food you can eat. And then, but you have to follow people who know far more about this than you do or than I do. And then answer all the questions that you possibly could come up with.
Everybody has a preconceived notion of what it means. They think we're just like eating meat and eggs, and that's the way you do it, and drinking, you know, to just a satisfied level. You have to be very deliberate, and you have to understand cramping. You know, if you don't understand the electrolytes and you do it
Yeah,
wrong,
and then
we've had
don't.
people go and think that there's something wrong with this diet because they're doing it completely
Well,
wrong.
and then they want to include a bunch of soft cheese, and they want to include, you know, the stevia drinks, and none of that stuff. Just water,
They have
you
to
know,
really understand what it's
bubbly
about.
water. We have a lot of bubbly water, but you know, there's a lot of things that you think you can preserve or hold on to, like Diet Coke or whatever, diet drinks or whatever. And if you don't quite answer those questions for yourself, it could hijack your progress or your success. And I say get all your questions answered before you go into it. And then when you believe, then it will be easier to sustain.
Yeah.
And
So
then stay connected. Stay connected
yeah.
Yeah.
with people.
That's very good advice, and yeah, that stay connected part is good as well. Like, it's important to have some community around you because it can be quite isolating, right?
And we are people who tend to forget. What we know today doesn't guarantee we're going to know it tomorrow, because we're probably going to forget. Because all of a sudden we're feeling good and we think it's Christmas, we can eat some avocados or some, you know, apple, whatever. And we need to keep ourselves protected from that, because it doesn't always go as well as we think.
Yeah, definitely.
So
So Jeff and Bridget, if people want to reach out to you, do you have any social media or any way of getting in contact?
we're really mainly Facebook
I do
and
have a
Facebook.
Facebook page for music. I don't know if that would end them up there, but it's Jeff Howard Music. My best song is Piece of Heaven, so you can find me that way. But you can put a comment on there. But yeah, it'd be nice for us to start something. But
Yeah, well, we
uh,
if anybody wants to reach out through Messenger, we're available. I'm Bridget Howard, or Bridget Mergens Howard.
I
Um,
think I'm just under. If you find Jeff Howard from Nebraska, Omaha, you'll probably find me
yeah,
in Facebook and
or find me and I'll get you to him, and
yeah.
because I'm easier. How many Bridgets do you know?
Yeah, no worries.
So,
Well, I'll link to those in the show notes. Jeff and Bridget, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories. I really appreciate your time.
oh, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much,
Pleasure meeting
Dave.
you.